Welcome to Ask Gwen this morning, everyone. I have Larissa with me, and Larissa is just sitting nicely in Costa Rica, and we'll get into that story why she's down there in a minute. But I'm going to let Larissa take it away and explain more about the story.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me on this morning, Gwen. I really appreciate it. So, yeah, my story of how this Canadian girl ended up in Costa Rica. I'm a publicist, and I was working on a movie of the week as the publicist, and we were shooting down here in Costa Rica. And there was this handsome guy who was one of the actors, and I fell in love and decided to leave everything behind and move down to Costa Rica. And this was in 2002. Now, back in that day, we were still on dial-up internet. So we didn't have laptop lifestyle or anything like that. And because I didn't know the media in Costa Rica, I didn't speak Spanish at that time, I couldn't do my job as a publicist. So I had to pivot. And I did so. I opened up one of the first destination wedding planning companies in Central America. And I used my PR skills to get the word out about my business. And because of that, I got on to like Martha Stewart Living Radio. I was featured, or our weddings were featured in major wedding publications. And it just snowballed to the point where I was named to the A-list top 30 destination wedding planners in the world. And that just kind of blew the doors off of my business. In my fourth year, we hit seven figures and I had 14 employees. So my business is living proof. My wedding business is living proof that publicity works. And so, but in the last few years, I've always been doing PR for myself and some friends. And then I realized that so many entrepreneurs, they're like scared of PR. They don't understand publicity. They don't see it as something they can use for their own business to amplify their audience and get their message out there. So that's what I do now is I help entrepreneurs use the power of free media exposure to grow and scale their business.
How cool is that? And you would think during the world pandemic was sitting in, even though I'm in the US, you're in Costa Rica, but the wedding business has gone down the tubes, basically. And so luckily you had a previous skill to fall back on.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we have not had, our firm hasn't had an event since February, and everything has either been pushed to 2021 or one of our biggest event actually canceled outright. I've got one that's moved to November, so fingers crossed. We're hoping that they'll be able to make it. We just opened our borders August 2nd here in Costa Rica, but
Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
only allowing, yeah, but they're only allowing Canadians, Europeans, and the UK. But you have to have get a COVID test 48 hours beforehand and have insurance against, in case you need hospital stay. So we'll see what happens. It's a crazy time we're living in, but yeah, it's having those skills to pivot. I think has been a godsend, and the time. I mean, and luckily for me, the, what I bring to the market is something that is needed. It's because everyone, if you own a business and someone is paying you money for your expertise to make their life better or to help them grow with their business, you are an expert. You are ready for media exposure. And that's what I try to get across to my clients is that, yeah, of course you're ready. You don't have to, are you ready for the front cover of Forbes? Probably not. But there's literally hundreds of thousands of other outlets that are just waiting to hear your story and where your audience is listening and reading.
And of course, podcasting is one of those outlets, people. Let's just say that. Let's just say that. That
Yeah.
yes, everyone being at home, and even though they say that podcasting has dropped like a rock, and I have noticed that in a little bit, but podcasting is one of those great outlets. So, okay. So, Melissa, what would be your first thing to a new entrepreneur who's listening who says, "Oh, I want to use Melissa to get on Wynn's podcast, or I just want to use Melissa to get on podcasts in general, or to get media in general." What would be your first plan of attack with them?
Okay. Well, I mean, for anybody who wants to, like, say, like, podcasts are a great way to get started with media exposure because they've exploded. I mean, there's so many podcasts out there now for every niche, and the idea is that you need to really get clear about what is your message. Now, it's the same as in marketing. You need to know what is your unique selling proposal, the same as for you as someone for media exposure. What is it that you bring to the discussion that is unique, that is different, that is going to make people want to sit up and take notice? So look at your life. Like everything in your life has brought you to this point, and everything has given you some sort of a teaching, a lesson that you can share with others. So when I work with clients, I tell them to look at their life as if it's a gold mine and look at for those little nuggets, dig them out, shine them off, and then let them shine out to the world. So start with a low hanging fruit. Like think about like what are your hobbies? That's something. There are podcasts. There are magazines and blogs dedicated to everything. Like, there's like 12 magazines for people who do crocheting and knitting, for example. Um, and that's an audience, like they're going to be very aligned with you because you share the same passion. You share the same hobby, or maybe you went to university or college. There's always an alumni magazine, and they want to showcase successful alumni from their school. So the idea is that you've got to find what is your unique story, and then what does it fit in to that particular audience. So, for example, if I was a knitter, I could say that the the patience and the ability to focus on the minute details while seeing the big pattern has helped me as an entrepreneur to be able to grow my business because I can see the high level view while also being able to hone in on those little details. And so that's step number one. Number two is then listen, listen to the podcasts that you want to approach, read the magazines or newspapers or blogs that you want to approach so that you are familiar with their voice, uh, who they're serving, and how they talk to their audience. Because I mean, think about it, when like you don't want someone just coming into your podcast and they have no idea what you're about, correct?
Correct. But so many people don't listen to Ask Win before they come on. Or maybe they do and just don't tell me. Um, it's not even funny. And um I got into a and I'll share this interview with you guys. I got into a sticky situation myself yesterday. Um I was interviewed on a podcast that I wasn't quite prepared for. I was prepared to share my story, but I wasn't quite prepared for the questions that that the interviewer was going to ask me about a certain subject in my life, and she kept going back to, well, AIDS, I AIDS and your stepmom abuse you, and that's the way it's going to be. I said, absolutely not. My story of abuse is public. My aide didn't do it. She knows better of it. And my stepmom didn't do it. She knows better of it. And my stepsister didn't do it. And they go, oh, I'm so sorry, and all this stuff. It's irritating when people don't listen to your work. And I think as a podcast host, before, in fact, Larissa, this is going to be a new rule. Before you interview me, why don't you come over and listen to my podcast so you at least know what you're getting yourself into?
No, that's really important because unfortunately, and I hear about this a lot. There's a lot of people who do publicity, and they get lazy, and they cut corners, and they just literally, it's like taking a handful of spaghetti and they throw it against the wall and to see what sticks. So it's like they take the same pitch and they just will like send it out to 100 outlets, and they don't even take the time to like write the person's name. It'll be like, dear podcaster. Well, you're not going to, that makes you feel like you're just some cheap commodity, that they don't care about your podcast, right? Like, you're not going to want to, how would that make you feel if I had approached you like, dear podcaster?
Well,
Like, you wouldn't want it.
and I'm I'm at the top of my game for cerebral palsy, and people know it by now. But the fact that, and all, as I said, I'll share the interview with you guys when it comes out. I don't even know when it's coming out, but the fact that this person automatically assumes my abuse story is the same abuse story like every other abuse story on the planet didn't make me feel good.
Well, no, and I'm actually really surprised that she would even go down that rabbit hole. Um, you know, it's a but like that's how my agency and how I teach my students to work is to do your homework, read articles from that reporter, listen to episodes with guests who are similar, who have the same or in the same niche, so that you understand, what's the voice, who's the audience, what are they talking about, so that you're in the right fit. The analogy I use is, think about, you've got Cinderella's shoe, and you're trying to find the right fit for your shoe. Not everyone's a fit. Not every podcast or not every outlet is going to be the right fit. You need to find the right fit, and that is going to do wonders, because then you're going to resonate with the right audience. And that's really what publicity comes down to, is taking your story, being able to give it in such a way that it's going to hit the right frequency, like a radio station. When you turn the dial, and it's like you hear like and then all of a sudden you get on that right frequency, and it's clear as a bell. That's what we're looking for when we are pitching. So
Yeah.
it's not complicated. It takes a little bit of work, but once you get dialed in, then you're going to understand who to focus on and who to just, they're not your people. It's not your outlet. It's not your podcast, right? Focus on the ones that are.
Well, that's a wonderful analogy. Cinderella's shoe. I never thought about it that way, but Cinderella's shoe may fit. And you people can always use me as a medium, but I just request that you absolutely listen to the podcast before you come approaching me because that's the way I roll. And I will make it clear that I have cerebral palsy, and if you don't want to be educated about cerebral palsy, move on.
Right, exactly. So that's you've got a very clear message, and there, like I said, there's always going to be the right audience for what it is that you have to say. So yeah, so that's basically what I do, and that's who I how I help people, and it's um it's so important as part of your marketing to use publicity because like with ads that you stop running an ad, they're gone. Like they're you never see them again, right? Like there is a very specific time. All this people spend so much time on social media, those stories on Instagram and Facebook, they're literally gone in 24 hours. But you get onto like this podcast, or you get into a magazine, or a newspaper article, or even a blog, those live on. And I mean, I still get people coming to my website from an article that was published 8 years ago. So,
Yeah.
that's the thing about PR is that it has staying power. People can come and listen to you, and on this podcast, and maybe 2 years down the road, it's like, oh, hey, that was a really interesting interview. I want to go check that person out. So that's the power. It's got staying power. It helps with your backlinking for your SEO, so that helps with your websites. And I think a lot of people just they don't understand the value of it. And I'm trying to get the message out that this is valuable, and everyone should have it as part of their business strategy.
Oh, yes, you are, Larissa. And Larissa, what is your favorite book?
Sorry, what is my favorite book?
Yes.
My favorite book for business is The Blue Ocean Strategy. Um, I don't know if you've read that book. Have you read it?
Nope, I haven't. I haven't heard of it.
Oh, it is a wonderful business book. It's two professors. I no, don't quote me on this. I think they're from Yale, or it's one of the Ivy League universities. I always forget this, but it's been around for a while, and their whole philosophy about business is that there's a red ocean and there's a blue ocean. So the red ocean is where everyone is competing for the same fish. So it's they're like fighting. It's bloody. There's just like all these boats on the water, and they're trying to attack all the little bit of fish that's there. But then you have the blue ocean, and that's where there's not like just one boat, and there's nothing around for miles, and they have all of the fish they could ever want. What their whole philosophy is you want to be in the blue ocean. You want to create something that is so unique, you don't have competition. And one of the examples they use is Cirque du Soleil. So, when Cirque du Soleil happened, when they were created, it was, back in the 1980s when circuses were dying. Like nobody was going to the circus anymore. And at that point, it would have, you're starting a circus. What, are you crazy? But they took the concept of a circus and totally turned it on its head because there were no animals. That wasn't like, the three-ring circus, but they took the humans who had the most incredible skills and created an entire story around it, made it theatrical. And of course, unfortunately with COVID, that's kind of all come crashing down, but it was a multi-billion-dollar industry. And there have been other companies over the years who've tried to imitate Cirque du Soleil, but they've never come close. There's only one. So that's an example of a blue ocean. And to me, I just think it's one of the most brilliant business books I've ever read.
So you're saying the Blue Ocean is one of your favorite business books. And what about personal book?
Personal book. This is funny. It goes back. It was a book I read when I was a teenager by L.M. Montgomery. And, um, she wrote Anne of Green Gables, and, uh, and I've just completely forgotten it's the blue oh my gosh, my brain has just gone. LM it's the blue oh my I can't remember the name of the book. Hold on, give me 2 seconds. The Blue Castle, The Blue Castle. So, yeah, The Blue Castle, it's this lovely little a novel about this woman in the late 1900s who was seen as quote a spinster, and then through a series of miscommunications, she thinks that she has a very short time to live, and then just casts off all of the shackles that society and her mother and aunt had imposed upon her, and she just becomes this free spirit and finds happiness. And it's a really lovely book.
The Blue Castle. And
Hmm.
yes, I have not heard of that. Of course, I have heard of Anne of Green Gables. I have actually been to, this is when we were allowed to travel, and I have actually been to what they say Anne of Green Gables' house was like on Prince Edward Island, and I loved it. I loved it dearly because I went up to Nova Scotia and I spent about 2 days up in Nova Scotia. But granted, that was in August, and I think Aspen, Colorado is cold. Larissa and I were talking about before I hit record about the winters up in Canada compared to the winters in, well, Costa Rica doesn't have winters, but we were talking about the summers up in Canada, and boy, you've really got humidity, and um, they're just hot. They're just hot, and so it's less humid in Costa Rica than it is in Canada. And I'm like, okay. And of course, um, the time I went to Prince Edward Island, it was August, so it was rainy, and I'm like, okay, get me out of here.
Yeah, the East Coast can be it can be pretty harsh weather, but yeah, it's a lovely book. It's one of those books that just Anne of Green Gables kind of I think just overshadows everything else that Ellen Montgomery has ever written. But definitely, if you're a fan of Anne of Green Gables, I think you'd really enjoy it. What is
And
your favorite book?
oh,
Oh,
what
sorry, Wen.
is my favorite book? My favorite book, well, I have two. One of them, which I'm slowly rereading, which I was in a complete daze when I read it the first time. Um, the book I'm slowly rereading for pleasure other than a textbook is Becoming, about Michelle Obama. And yes, that is one of my favorite books. Another one of my favorite book is A Walk in the Woods by Bill
Mm.
Blythe. And if you guys have never read A Walk in the Woods, basically you're gonna get a real eye-opening experience in the way he did it, and it's based on a true story. It's him walking the Appalachian Trail and starting out in Georgia, ending up wherever the Appalachian Trail ends up, and it's a real eye-opening experience. So those are um, my two favorite books.
Oh, I have not read either, but I do have Michelle Obama's book on my to read list.
Yeah,
So I definitely
you
will check that
you
out.
should. And
Yeah.
A Walk in the Woods is older than Michelle Obama's book, but it's still good. And so what is your morning routine, Larissa?
My morning routine is I get up. We have 4 dogs, one of which is a little fox terrier puppy. So let him out, and then yeah, coffee. Right now, my daughter is doing virtual schooling from home, so I have to get her up for her class at 7:30. And yeah, I just I live up on the hill here in the mountains, just west of San Jose, and there's usually a ton of birds. So I like to just sit here looking out my window on all over the greenery and listening to the birds and just kind of getting myself together for what's going to be coming for the rest of the day. I have some of my team are in different time zones, so I'm usually catching up with them first thing in the morning. And yeah, just start going in and attacking the day. That's pretty much my morning routine. It's coffee.
Oh,
What's
once was coffee. Well, I wish I I wish I could start with coffee. Now, granted, you guys know this, who've been around me long enough. I gave up coffee. I've also given them wine. So, um, this is my on. This is my off-camera personality. The personality that you hear is the most upbeat personality and upbeat personality by 8 a.m. I'm like, hey, sometimes I surprise myself how upbeat I am at 8 a.m. without coffee, but I managed to do it.
Well, kudos to you because I run on coffee in the morning and wine at night.
Wow.
So
And so a lot of people do, and they're like, what? When you gave up what? And yeah, but I have a family history of alcoholism in my
uh,
family, so I decided to, well, the last drink I had was in um, on June 23rd, and then I decided to cut it in July because I'm like, okay, things were coming at me and wine wasn't wine didn't want to be involved. Things were coming at me and um people were saying to me every time I would ask for a glass of wine, people would say their first words out of their mouths, don't get drunk. And so I'm like, okay, okay, stay away from the wine. And so in July,
yeah.
I I um I finally cut it and my body's been ever so thankful that I cut wine, and coffee was a little bit harder to cut, um, because I was having caffeine withdrawals, but my body's
Mm.
recovered from that, and, I still have access to wine, I just don't touch it. I mean, yeah.
Well, good for you. Yeah, I have like 1 cup of coffee in the morning, and that's it. I'm not one of these people who drinks coffee all throughout the day. And I'm in Costa Rica, which is the entire culture is built around
Coffee,
coffee because
yeah.
yeah, in fact, everybody they stop at like 10 in the morning for a coffee break, and then at 3 in the afternoon, everyone stops and they sit down with a cup of coffee and like some type of cake or cookie, and they're very much into relationships, like very taking that time to talk to each other. And family is of big importance here. Like Sunday afternoon, everyone goes for well, they're opening things up slowly, but usually Sunday afternoons every restaurant is packed because all the families go out,
Yeah.
extended families go out for lunch together. So it's a really nice, it's a very nice culture.
Yeah, whereas um, the U.S. is work, 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 work until we fall over. And so, if I had my choices, I would be a digital nomad and just travel the world and
Mhm.
find a culture that is, well, number one, disability oriented, but is more of let's slow down and focus on what we do have versus the work life balance.
Mhm. Yeah. No, and it's that's the thing. It's funny because I see a lot of uh, clients who come in, and it's usually people from New York City. The first 2 days they're in Costa Rica, they're like vibrating because everything moves at a much slower pace. Uh, and then they just kind of get into the vibe and they realize that, like, you'll be driving on the main road and you'll literally see two buses will stop in the middle of the road so that the drivers can have a little chit chat. And that's just the way it is here. Like nobody's in a
Okay,
rush.
yeah. The
Everyone's
the work life balance in the US is awful. And of course, now since we're all taking it virtually, it's even worse.
Yeah, because you don't have like to, closing there's no office door, quote unquote, to close. So yeah, it's easy to just kind of be on all the time while you're
On
home. So
no,
yeah.
on all the time. And unfortunately for me, my office that I'm sitting in right now doesn't have a door to close. So it's like, okay, open the floor plan, open the floor plan, got the best of me, and I'm still trying to deal with that. But anyway, Larissa, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I guess why did you like what got you started podcasting?
Because I wrote a book, and since then I have written and published 11 books. And so I wrote a book that is now 10 years old as of yesterday. And so I wrote a book. I have been very, very lucky because of that book. I have been able to get into publicity like there's no tomorrow. I've been featured in the Huffington Post and everything else. And I've been featured on a bunch of podcasts and still doing it. And I have my own YouTube channel, and I'm also working on a journalism degree as we speak, and that's going to be done in April of 2022. And so I am super happy about that. And so, yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah, well, I think that's fantastic, and good for you for getting into journalism. It's a very it's a great profession, and I say this as someone who I used to be a journalist myself.
Well,
So, yeah, yeah. Well, best of luck with all that, and thank you so much for having me on. Like,
you're
it's been
welcome.
a
And where can people find you, and how can people get a hold of you?
Well, it's really easy to find me because I'm the only Larissa Banting in the world. So they can go to my website, which is my name, LarissABanting.com. And they can find out a little bit more about me, read some of my blog is there, articles I've been in, and also what I offer. I have everything from, I have some free offers on there to help you get started with publicity and all the way through. And I'm always open to if somebody wants to jump on a call, and I can see how I can help them get started with PR.
Yeah, well, you guys, you need to get on the PR train because I have quickly discovered that podcasting is here to stay, and I will just say this flat out, and this goes to Larissa too, that I will be happy to help any publicist out there that wants their clients on Ask When. It's not even funny because I feel like everyone has a story and everyone needs to share their story. And so, even though I'm looking for more and more for people with disabilities, hidden and unhidden disabilities, the more the merrier that joins the podcasting route.
Yep, and you've got a great platform here to get the message out. So,
Well, it took me 4 years doing it part time. Finally, COVID kicked me out the door of my day job. So now I'm
along with a lot of other people, yeah,
full
unfortunately.
time. A lot, yeah, a lot of other people got kicked out the door of their day jobs. But now, because I built my platform up and because people know me, I am super lucky that I am doing this as my full time profession slash journalism as my soon to be full time profession.
Well, that's fantastic, and I hope that you have continued success, and look forward to seeing and hearing more from you.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you guys supporting. And I hope that you will reach out to Larissa for your PR needs. And I hope that any publicist who's listening to this wants to, if they want to reach out to me directly, they can, or have someone on their behalf reach out to me and let's make it work, you guys. Be safe, be happy, be strong while we're getting to the end of this world pandemic. And I'll catch you guys next time. Bye, you guys.